Jamal Washington approached the graduation stage, finally ready to escape 4 years of relentless torment. This was supposed to be his moment of triumph, his clean break from the nightmare. But Jake Morrison and Tyler Brooks had other plans. They saw a quiet black kid, perfect for one final humiliation. Laughter exploded. Phones recorded everything. The audience watched in cruel silence. But what they didn't know was that humiliation had a way of forging people into something harder. They thought they would get away with it forever. They couldn't have been more wrong. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The fluorescent lights of Lincoln High School's main hallway buzzed overhead as Jamal Washington adjusted his graduation cap for the third time that morning. 3 weeks until freedom. 3 weeks until he could leave behind the whispered comments, the shoulder checks in the hallway, and the constant weight of being watched. "You nervous about the ceremony?" his friend Marcus asked, closing his locker with a metallic clang. "More excited than nervous," Jamal replied, though his stomach churned as Jake Morrison and Tyler Brooks walked past, their conversation loud enough for him to hear. "Can't believe we have to sit through another boring graduation speech," Tyler said, not bothering to lower his voice. "Don't worry," Jake responded with a smirk. "Graduation will be memorable for everyone." Jamal's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to keep walking. Just 3 more weeks. He'd survived 4 years of their casual cruelty. The accidental trips, the racist jokes disguised as humor, the way they made him feel invisible and hypervisible at the same time. State University represented everything different. A fresh start, new people, a chance to be seen for his mind rather than targeted for his skin. That evening, Jamal sat at the kitchen table with his grandmother Rosa, addressing graduation announcements with careful handwriting. "Your mama would be so proud," Rosa said, her weathered hands smoothing the envelope. "First in our family to go to college on a scholarship." "Partial scholarship, Grandma," Jamal corrected gently. "But it's something. It's everything, baby. Between that scholarship and my savings, we'll make it work." Rosa's voice carried determination mixed with worry. She'd been working double shifts at the elementary school cafeteria, squirreling away every penny for his college expenses. "I know you're sacrificing for me," Jamal said. "I won't let you down. You've already made me proud." "Through everything!" Rosa's voice carried the weight of every parent-teacher conference where she'd advocated for her grandson. Every night she'd found him doing homework with a split lip or bruised ribs that he claimed came from falling down. "It's almost over," Jamal said. "After graduation, I never have to see them again." Rosa nodded, but something in her expression suggested she knew it wasn't that simple. "Just remember what I taught you about taking the high road. Your strength comes from your character, not your fists." The weeks passed in a blur of final exams and graduation preparations. Jamal threw himself into his studies, maintaining the grades that had earned him his partial scholarship to State University. He helped Rosa with her garden, read books on his future major, and counted down the days until he could walk across that stage with dignity. The night before graduation, he tried on his cap and gown in front of Rosa's old mirror. "Look at you," she whispered from the doorway. "So handsome, so smart. Tomorrow, you show everyone what the Washington family is made of." Jamal straightened his shoulders. Tomorrow, he would walk across that stage, shake the principal's hand, and accept his diploma as validation of 4 years of perseverance. Jake and Tyler would become memories, high school bullies who would fade into irrelevance as he built his real life. Graduation morning dawned bright and humid. The gymnasium filled with proud families, younger siblings fidgeting in their chairs, and the buzz of anticipation that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Jamal found his place in the alphabetically arranged line of graduates, his stomach fluttering with nervous energy. Around him, his classmates chatted excitedly about summer plans and college preparations. Some would attend community college, others would work, a few had military commitments. But today, they were all equals, all survivors of the same 4-year journey. Washington, Jamal, would be called near the end, giving him time to watch his classmates receive their diplomas and imagine his own moment on stage. Rosa sat in the 3rd row, wearing her best dress and holding her old camera. She'd taken the morning off from her job at the elementary school cafeteria, something she rarely did, to be here for this moment. Her pride radiated across the gymnasium as she spotted her grandson in line. The ceremony began with the principal's welcome speech, followed by the valedictorian address from Sarah Chen, a quiet girl Jamal had shared several classes with over the years. As she spoke about perseverance and community, Jamal felt a surge of optimism about his future. The diploma presentations began. Each name called represented a small victory, a young adult ready to take on the world. Jamal watched his classmates walk across the stage, some stumbling nervously, others striding confidently, all of them transformed by the simple act of receiving that rolled piece of paper. As the alphabet progressed toward W, Jamal's heart began to race. This was it. This was his moment to claim what he'd earned through 4 years of academic excellence despite constant obstacles. Tyler. Jake, Principal Davis called, his voice echoing through the gymnasium speakers. The 2 boys walked confidently across the stage, their families applauding from the audience. Jake's father stood up, recording with his phone, while Tyler's mother beamed with obvious pride. As they descended the stage steps, Jake caught Tyler's eye and nodded toward where Jamal sat in the graduate line. They'd been planning this moment for weeks, waiting for the perfect opportunity to remind Washington exactly where he belonged. The ceremony continued with mechanical precision. Valdez, Maria, applause. Walker, James, more applause. Each name brought Jamal closer to his moment, his hands growing sweaty inside his graduation gloves. Rosa adjusted her camera, checking the battery one more time. She'd waited 18 years for this moment, watching her grandson walk across that stage with dignity, claiming the education his parents had never lived to see him achieve. Washington, Jamal. Jamal stood, his legs slightly unsteady, but his spine straight. The walk to the stage felt endless, every step carrying him toward vindication. He climbed the stairs, approached Principal Davis, and extended his hand for the diploma that represented everything he'd worked for. Principal Davis smiled and handed him the rolled certificate tied with Lincoln High's blue and gold ribbon. "Congratulations, Mr. Washington. Best of luck at State University." "Thank you, sir." Jamal's voice carried quiet pride as he accepted the diploma. Turning toward the audience, where Rosa sat, with tears streaming down her cheeks. That's when Jake and Tyler struck. They'd positioned themselves at the base of the stage stairs, ostensibly waiting to congratulate classmates. As Jamal descended, diploma clutched in his right hand, Jake stepped forward with a wide grin. "Hey, Washington, let me see that diploma. I want to check if it's real." Before Jamal could react, Jake snatched the certificate from his hand and tossed it to Tyler, who caught it with theatrical flair. "Looks fake to me," Tyler announced loudly, his voice carrying across the gymnasium. "I think someone made a mistake." The audience began to murmur, confusion rippling through the crowd. Some parents laughed, thinking it was harmless graduation pranks between friends. Others sensed something darker. "Give it back," Jamal said quietly, his voice barely audible over the growing noise. "What's that?" Jake cupped his ear mockingly. "Speak up, Washington. Use your words like a big boy." Tyler held the diploma high above his head, just out of Jamal's reach. "Maybe we should return this to the office. Tell them there's been some kind of mix-up. Jamal lunged for the certificate, desperation overriding caution. Tyler stepped back with a laugh and began tearing the diploma in half, the ripping sound sharp and final in the suddenly quiet gymnasium. "Oops," Tyler said with mock concern. "Butterfingers." Jake shoved Jamal hard in the chest, sending him stumbling backward. "Careful there, Washington. Don't want you to hurt yourself over some piece of paper." Jamal hit the ground hard, his cap flying off as laughter erupted from sections of the audience. Some people recorded with their phones, already composing social media posts about the funny graduation prank. The torn pieces of his diploma fluttered around him like confetti. From her seat, Rosa shot to her feet, her camera forgotten as she moved toward the stage. Her face had transformed from joy to pure fury, but security guards were already intervening, directing families to remain seated. Principal Davis stepped to the microphone, his voice strained. "Let's maintain order, please. We'll continue with the ceremony." Jake and Tyler high-fived each other, their mission accomplished. They'd reduced Jamal to exactly what they'd always seen him as, someone beneath them, someone whose achievements could be literally torn apart for their amusement. Jamal remained on the floor for several seconds, staring at the torn pieces of his diploma. Around him, the ceremony resumed as if nothing had happened. Other graduates received their certificates, while he sat surrounded by the shredded remains of 4 years of academic achievement. A teacher finally helped him to his feet, brushing off his gown with professional efficiency. "Are you hurt?" she asked quietly. Jamal shook his head, unable to find words. The physical pain from the fall paled compared to the devastation of watching his moment of triumph become public humiliation. As he walked unsteadily back to his seat, he heard Jake's voice behind him. "Just a prank, man. Don't be so sensitive." The laughter continued sporadically throughout the rest of the ceremony. Rosa remained standing, her hands clenched into fists, watching her grandson disappear into himself the way he had so many times before. When the ceremony finally ended with the traditional cap toss, Jamal didn't participate. He sat motionless as celebration exploded around him, torn diploma pieces still scattered at his feet like the remnants of a dream that had died in front of everyone he'd ever known. The ride home from graduation passed in suffocating silence. Rosa gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had gone white, while Jamal stared out the passenger window, watching familiar streets blur past. The torn pieces of his diploma sat in a plastic bag on his lap. Rosa had insisted they collect every fragment. "Those boys." Rosa finally spoke, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "What they did was evil. Pure evil." Jamal said nothing. What was there to say? That he'd endured 4 years of their cruelty only to have his moment of triumph destroyed in front of everyone? That the laughter would replay in his head forever? "We should report this to the school board, to the police. This was assault." "It won't matter," Jamal whispered. "It never matters." Rosa pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine. In the sudden quiet, she reached over and took her grandson's hand. "Baby, I need you to hear me. What happened today doesn't change who you are or what you've accomplished. You earned that diploma through 4 years of hard work. Nobody can take that away from you." Jamal nodded, but his eyes remained empty. "I'm going to my room." For the next week, Jamal barely left his bedroom. He ignored calls from classmates, deleted social media apps to avoid seeing videos of his humiliation, and picked at the meals Rosa brought to his door. The acceptance letter from State University sat unopened on his desk, the partial scholarship that had once filled him with pride now feeling like charity. Rosa watched her grandson disappearing into himself and made a decision. "Get dressed," she announced on a sweltering Tuesday morning, standing in his doorway with car keys in hand. "We're going out." I don't want to go anywhere." "That wasn't a request, Jamal Washington. Get dressed. Now." 20 minutes later, Rosa pulled up in front of Rodriguez's boxing gym, a converted warehouse with faded paint and windows covered in fight posters. Through the open doors, they could hear the rhythmic pounding of heavy bags and the sharp snap of speed bags. "Grandma, what are we doing here?" "Something I should have done years ago." Rosa got out of the car and walked toward the entrance, leaving Jamal no choice but to follow. Inside, the gym smelled of sweat, leather, and determination. Fighters of all ages worked the equipment. Teenagers learning footwork, middle-aged men reliving their youth, a few serious competitors preparing for actual bouts. A stocky Hispanic man in his 40s approached them, wiping his hands on a towel. "Can I help you folks?" "Are you Coach Rodriguez?" Rosa asked. "Danny Rodriguez, yes ma'am." "This is my place." Rosa straightened her shoulders. "My grandson needs to learn how to fight." Coach Rodriguez studied Jamal, taking in the defeated posture and hollow eyes. "What happened to him?" "Life happened, and he needs to be ready for when it happens again." Jamal found his voice. "Grandma, I don't want to—" "You want to spend the rest of your life letting people like those boys define who you are?" Rosa's voice carried steel. "Your parents didn't die in that car crash so you could give up. They died believing you'd fight for the life they couldn't live to see you have." Coach Rodriguez crossed his arms. "Fighting's not just about throwing punches, son. It's about discipline, control, knowing when to fight and when to walk away. You interested in learning that?" Jamal looked around the gym, watching fighters push themselves past their limits. Something stirred in his chest. Not anger, but hunger. Hunger to never feel helpless again. "Yes, sir." The summer transformed Jamal in ways he hadn't imagined possible. Every morning at 6, he was at the gym, learning footwork and form. Coach Rodriguez worked him harder than any teacher ever had, pushing him past the point where his lungs burned and his muscles screamed. "Pain is just weakness leaving the body," Coach Rodriguez would say, holding the heavy bag steady as Jamal threw combinations. "But anger without discipline is just stupidity with violence." Rosa watched her grandson's metamorphosis with a mixture of pride and concern. His shoulders broadened, his movements became more confident, and the hollow look gradually left his eyes. But she also noticed the way his jaw tightened when he thought no one was looking, the intensity that flickered behind his calm exterior. By August, Jamal could go 3 rounds with the gym's amateur fighters. His reflexes had sharpened, his body had hardened, and most importantly, his mind had focused. He no longer saw himself as a victim waiting for the next attack. "You're ready," Coach Rodriguez told him on his last day before leaving for college. "But remember what I taught you. The strongest fighters know when not to fight." Jamal nodded, understanding the wisdom but feeling the fire burning in his chest. He was no longer the boy who'd been humiliated at graduation. He was someone who could protect himself. State University's campus bustled with freshman orientation activities. Jamal moved into his dorm room, unpacked his belongings, and felt genuine optimism for the first time since graduation. This was his chance to start over, to be known for his mind rather than targeted for his skin. That optimism lasted exactly 3 days. He was walking across the main quad, heading to the library, when he heard a familiar laugh. His blood froze as he turned to see Jake Morrison and Tyler Brooks lounging on the steps of the Student Union, surrounded by other freshmen who were already drawn to their easy confidence and obvious wealth. Jake noticed him first, his face shifting from casual amusement to shocked recognition. "Well, well," Jake said, standing up slowly. "Look who followed us to college." Tyler stood up beside Jake, a slow grin spreading across his face. "No way! Washington actually made it to State University?" Who'd you have to beg for that scholarship? The group of freshmen around them sensed entertainment brewing. Some pulled out phones, others simply gathered closer, forming a loose circle that felt all too familiar to Jamal. But this time, he didn't shrink back. His summer of training had changed more than just his body. "Just trying to get to the library," Jamal said calmly, his voice steady in a way that surprised even him. "The library?" Jake laughed, looking around at his new audience. "Guys, this is the kid I was telling you about from high school. Remember that graduation prank video that went viral?" Several students nodded, recognition dawning on their faces. Jamal felt the familiar burn of shame, but underneath it, something else simmered. A controlled fire that Coach Rodriguez had taught him to harness. "That was hilarious," one of Jake's new friends said. "You should show them, dude." Tyler stepped closer, emboldened by the crowd's energy. "What's wrong, Washington? Cat got your tongue again?" He reached out to shove Jamal's shoulder, just like he had countless times in high school. But this time, Jamal's hand shot up and caught Tyler's wrist before contact. His grip iron-strong from months of heavy bag work. "Don't touch me," Jamal said quietly, his voice carrying an edge that made Tyler's eyes widen. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Tyler tried to pull his wrist free, but Jamal's grip held firm for 3 seconds before releasing him. Jake's expression shifted from amusement to something more serious. "Whoa! Washington's got some fight in him now. Look out, everyone!" Jamal stepped back, his grandmother's words echoing in his head about taking the high road. "I'm not looking for trouble." "Good thing," Jake said, "because trouble has a way of finding people like you around here." The crowd began to disperse as other students lost interest, but Jake and Tyler remained, studying Jamal with new calculation. This wasn't the same broken boy they'd tormented in high school. As Jamal walked away toward the library, he heard Tyler mutter to Jake, "Did you see how strong his grip was? What happened to him over the summer?" "Doesn't matter," Jake replied. "By the time we're done with him, he'll remember his place." Meanwhile, in Wilson Hall's third-floor study lounge, Sarah Chen looked up from her organic chemistry textbook as commotion drifted through the windows. She'd been the valedictorian at Lincoln High, the quiet girl who'd watched Jamal endure years of harassment while she focused on her own academic survival. When she'd seen the graduation video circulating online over the summer, she'd felt sick, not just because of what happened, but because she'd never spoken up, never intervened. Now, seeing those same boys on campus, she realized her silence might continue to cost someone else their dignity. Sarah gathered her books and headed downstairs, following the sound of familiar voices toward the quad. Back outside, Jake was already working on recruitment, introducing Tyler to their new dorm mates with practiced charm. Their families' donations to the university had secured them premium housing and immediate social capital. "This place is going to be incredible," Jake told a group of impressionable freshmen. "My dad says the key to college success is knowing who belongs and who doesn't." "Speaking of which," Tyler added, "you guys should know there's this kid from our high school here, Jamal Washington. He's troubled, violent tendencies. You should probably avoid him." The lies came so easily, Jake almost believed them himself. By tomorrow, half the freshman class would have heard some version of the story. Jamal, as the angry, dangerous outsider who didn't belong in their community. What they didn't know was that Sarah Chen had been standing just around the corner, recording every word on her phone. That evening, Jamal sat in his dorm room, staring at his hands. The muscle memory of catching Tyler's wrist, the way his body had moved without conscious thought. Coach Rodriguez's training had become instinct. But with that power came responsibility, and the weight of Rosa's teachings about character. His roommate, an engineering major named Kevin from Ohio, looked up from his calculus homework. "You okay, man? You've been quiet since you got back." "Just processing some stuff from home," Jamal replied. Those guys giving you trouble earlier? I saw the whole thing from my window. Jamal tensed. What did you see? Looked like some high school drama following you to college. But honestly, the way you handled it was impressive. Calm under pressure. That takes real strength. Kevin's words surprised Jamal. He'd expected judgment, not respect. My older brother had bullies in high school, Kevin continued. He said the hardest part about college was learning that most people aren't like that. But the ones who are, they usually get worse before they get better. As if summoned by their conversation, loud laughter echoed from the hallway outside. Jake and Tyler's voices carried clearly through the thin dorm walls as they regaled their new friends with exaggerated stories from high school, each tale designed to establish their dominance and Jamal's otherness. Jamal clenched his fists, feeling the calluses from his summer training. He could end this quickly, show them exactly how much he'd changed. But Rose's voice whispered in his memory, "Your strength comes from your character, not your fists." The question was, how long could character withstand the systematic erosion of dignity that Jake and Tyler specialized in? The harassment began subtly, the way poison seeps into water. Jake and Tyler had learned sophistication during their brief summer of college preparation, understanding that university administrators took a dimmer view of obvious bullying than high school teachers had. It started with social isolation. Whenever Jamal entered the dining hall, conversations would quiet, and chairs would suddenly become unavailable at tables where he'd been welcome before. Study groups he'd joined would mysteriously change locations without telling him. Campus organizations he'd expressed interest in would somehow lose his application. "It's weird," Kevin told Jamal after their second week of classes. "People keep asking me strange questions about you, like whether you have anger issues or if you've ever been violent." Jamal's jaw tightened. "What do you tell them?" "The truth. That you're the most level-headed guy I know. But someone's definitely spreading stories." The someone became clear during a campus tour that Jamal was leading for prospective students. As he pointed out the library and explained study resources, Tyler appeared with a group of current students. "Oh, hey, you might want to know," Tyler said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's Jamal Washington. He had some incidents at our high school. Just something to be aware of for campus safety." The prospective students' parents immediately stepped closer to their children, eyeing Jamal with suspicion. One mother asked the admissions representative if there was another tour guide available. Jamal felt his hands begin to shake, not with fear, but with the effort of containing months of trained power. Coach Rodriguez's voice echoed in his head. "Control the anger. Don't let it control you." "Excuse me," Jamal said politely to the tour group. "I need to step away for a moment." He walked quickly toward the campus recreation center, his breathing shallow and controlled. Inside, he found what he was looking for, a small boxing area tucked behind the weight room, mostly unused except for the occasional student blowing off steam. Jamal wrapped his hands methodically, the familiar ritual calming his racing heart. When he began working the heavy bag, each punch carried the weight of weeks of accumulated frustration. Left hook for the dining hall isolation. Right cross for the study group exclusions. Uppercut for Tyler's smug face during the tour. Nice form! Jamal turned to find a senior watching him, an athletic black student with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. "Thanks. I'm Jamal. Marcus Thompson. I run informal boxing sessions here twice a week." "You've got real training." "Some are at Rodriguez Gym back home." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Danny Rodriguez? That's serious training. You should come to our sessions. Tuesday and Thursday nights, 8 o'clock. For the first time in weeks, Jamal smiled. "I'd like that." Meanwhile, in the Pi Kappa Alpha house, Jake paced the common room while Tyler scrolled through social media on his phone. "It's not working," Jake said, frustration sharp in his voice. "He's not breaking like he used to." "Maybe he's just better at hiding it," Tyler replied, not looking up from his screen. "No, it's more than that. Did you see how he handled himself during that tour thing? The old Washington would have run away crying. This one just left, controlled, like he was choosing his battles." Tyler finally looked up, sensing his friend's genuine agitation. "So, what are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to be smarter about this. More direct. Make him react in a way that shows everyone who he really is underneath all that fake composure." "What did you have in mind?" Jake's expression hardened. "Something that reminds him exactly what happened at graduation. Something public enough that he can't just walk away from." Back at the recreation center, Jamal was discovering something unexpected. Respect. The students who came to Marcus's boxing sessions treated him as an equal, judging him solely on his skill and character inside the ring. "You've got natural timing," Marcus told him after their first session together. "But more importantly, you've got discipline. Some guys come in here just wanting to hit things. You're actually learning." Sarah Chen, who had been quietly documenting Jake and Tyler's harassment campaign, finally approached Jamal after their American literature class. "We need to talk," she said quietly, as other students filed out. "About what?" "About what's happening to you on campus. I know what Jake and Tyler are doing because I've been recording it." Jamal stared at her. "Recording it? Someone needs to be keeping track. What they did at graduation was just the beginning. They're systematically trying to destroy your reputation here before you can establish yourself." "Why do you care?" Sarah's expression grew somber. "Because I should have cared 4 years ago. I was valedictorian, but I was also a coward. I watched them torment you and said nothing, because I was afraid they'd turn on me. And now? Now I'm tired of watching good people suffer while bad people win through manipulation and lies." Jamal considered her words. Having an ally, especially one as respected as Sarah, could change everything. But it also meant acknowledging that the situation was escalating beyond his ability to handle alone. "What do you think I should do?" "Keep being yourself. Keep taking the high road. But also, keep getting stronger." Sarah glanced toward the recreation center. "Word is you've been impressing people at those boxing sessions." The October air carried the crisp promise of changing seasons as students hurried across campus between classes. Jamal had settled into a routine that gave him strength. Morning workouts, afternoon classes, evening boxing sessions with Marcus, and late-night study sessions where his academic excellence continued to shine. He was walking out of Professor Mitchell's American literature class when he overheard a heated conversation near the campus coffee shop. "You're disgusting, Tyler." "Absolutely disgusting." Jamal recognized the voice. Emma Rodriguez, a sophomore from California who'd been dating Tyler since freshman orientation. She stood facing Tyler with her arms crossed, her usually perfect composure cracked by obvious anger. "Come on, Em. It was just a joke," Tyler said, his voice carrying the wheedling tone of someone who knew he'd crossed a line. "A joke? You and Jake spent 10 minutes telling everyone at lunch that Jamal Washington is some kind of dangerous criminal. You made up stories about him attacking people in high school. That's not a joke. That's character assassination." Jamal paused behind a nearby tree, not wanting to eavesdrop, but unable to avoid hearing the conversation that was clearly about him. "He's not like us, Emma. You don't understand because you didn't go to high school with him." "No, Tyler, I understand perfectly. He's not like you because he's actually a decent person." Emma's voice rose, drawing stares from passing students. "I've watched him in our chemistry study group. He's kind, he's smart, and he helps people who are struggling. Meanwhile, you spend your time spreading lies about him Because you can't stand that he won't cower anymore. Anymore? Tyler's voice sharpened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know what you and Jake did at graduation. I saw the video. And frankly, it made me sick to my stomach that I was dating someone capable of such cruelty. Tyler stepped closer, his face flushing red. You're overreacting. It was high school stuff. Boys being boys. Boys being boys? Emma's laugh was bitter. You humiliated another human being on what should have been one of the proudest days of his life. You destroyed his diploma in front of his grandmother. That wasn't boys being boys, Tyler. That was racism and bullying. And I won't pretend otherwise anymore. The word racism hung in the air like a challenge. Tyler looked around nervously, aware that other students were listening. Don't throw that word around so casually, he said, lowering his voice. What other word fits? You target him because he's black, because you think you're better than him, because your daddy's money has convinced you that other people exist for your entertainment. Tyler's face went from red to white. Emma, you're being dramatic. I'm being honest. And I'm done. Emma pulled off the silver bracelet Tyler had given her for her birthday and dropped it at his feet. We're finished. She walked away, leaving Tyler standing alone with curious students, pretending not to stare. When he bent to pick up the bracelet, his hands were shaking. From his hiding spot, Jamal felt an unexpected mixture of emotions. Relief that someone had finally called Tyler out publicly. Satisfaction that the bully was experiencing a consequence for his actions. But also wariness. He knew from experience that humiliated bullies became more dangerous, not less. That evening at boxing practice, Marcus noticed Jamal's distraction. Your footwork's off tonight, Marcus said, holding the focus mitts steady. Something on your mind? Jamal threw a combination that lacked his usual precision. Tyler Brooks got dumped today. His girlfriend called him out for the way he treats me. That's good news, right? Maybe. Or maybe it makes him more desperate to prove he's still in control. Marcus lowered the mitts. You think he's going to escalate? I think humiliated bullies don't usually just give up and change their ways. Meanwhile, across campus in the Pi Kappa Alpha house, Tyler was proving Jamal's instincts correct. He sat in Jake's room, crushing empty beer cans with more force than necessary. She called me racist, Jake, in front of half the sophomore class. Jake looked up from his economics homework. So, Emma Rodriguez was always too good for you anyway. Find someone else. You're missing the point. Tyler stood up abruptly, pacing the small room. She humiliated me because of him. Because of Washington. Everything that's gone wrong since we got here traces back to him. How do you figure that? In high school, we had control. We knew exactly where we stood, where he stood. But here, people don't know the natural order of things. They see him in those boxing sessions, see him getting good grades, and they start thinking he's somehow equal to us. Jake closed his textbook, recognizing the dangerous edge in his friend's voice. What are you saying? I'm saying it's time we reminded everyone, including Washington himself, exactly who he is and where he belongs. And this time, we make sure the message sticks. The menace in Tyler's voice carried the weight of years of unchecked privilege, meeting its first real resistance. Outside, the autumn wind picked up, rattling windows like a warning of the storm to come. The harassment had reached a breaking point by mid-October. Jake and Tyler's whisper campaign had poisoned enough minds that Jamal found himself increasingly isolated. Study groups disbanded when he arrived. Dining hall conversations stopped when he passed. Even some of the boxing session regulars began giving him sideways looks. Sarah Chen watched it all happen with growing anger. During their chemistry lab, she finally confronted him. You can't keep letting them do this to you, she said quietly, as they measured solutions. I've been documenting everything, but we need to report it Officially. Jamal's jaw tightened. Reporting it won't change anything. It'll just make me look weak. Weak? You think standing up for yourself makes you weak? I think running to authority figures instead of handling my own problems makes me weak. Sarah slammed her beaker down hard enough that other students looked over. Your grandmother didn't raise you to be stupid, Jamal. There's a difference between handling your problems and walking into a trap. That evening, Jamal called Rosa from his dorm room. How's school, baby? Rosa's voice carried warmth across the miles. Challenging. Those boys again? Yes, ma'am. They're trying to turn everyone against me. Rosa was quiet for a long moment. What does your heart tell you to do? Show them what I learned this summer. Stop walking away. And your head? That fighting proves everything they've been saying about me. Sometimes, baby, the world puts us in positions where all our choices have consequences. The question is, which consequences can you live with? Meanwhile, Jake and Tyler were planning in the Pi Kappa Alpha house. The monthly party was tonight, and they'd spent days spreading word that Jamal wasn't welcome. Here's the plan, Jake said, standing in the backyard behind the fraternity house where shadows gathered away from the main party. We get Sarah Chen back here, make some noise, and Washington comes running. And then, Tyler asked, still nursing his wounded pride from Emma's public rejection. Then we remind him what happened at graduation. Except this time, we make sure he remembers permanently. The party was loud and crowded by 10 o'clock. Sarah had come with friends, but was planning to leave early for studying. She was heading toward the exit when Tyler intercepted her near the back door. Sarah, can I talk to you outside? About Jamal. I think I owe you both an apology. Against her better judgment, she followed him into the shadows behind the house. The moment they were hidden, Jake appeared. Scream, Jake told her calmly. Loud enough for Washington to hear. I'm not helping you hurt him. Tyler pulled out his phone. Hey, Washington, you need to get to Pi Kappa House right now. Your girlfriend's in trouble. Sarah heard Jamal's sharp voice through the speaker. What trouble? Sarah, are you there? Jamal, don't, Sarah started, but Jake covered her mouth. Better hurry, Tyler said, before something really bad happens. Jamal was at the recreation center when the call came, working the heavy bag to burn off frustration. Marcus saw his face change as he answered the phone. What's wrong? Marcus asked. They have Sarah. Jamal was already unwrapping his hands, his movements sharp and purposeful. Who has Sarah? Jake and Tyler, at the Pi Kappa house. Marcus grabbed his arm. Don't do this, man. It's obviously a setup. I know exactly what it is. Jamal's voice carried a cold certainty that made Marcus step back. But I can't let them hurt her because of me. Then call campus security. Call the police. Jamal was already walking toward the door. By the time they get there, it'll be too late. Jamal, think about this. You go there angry. You'll give them exactly what they want. Jamal stopped at the door, his hand on the handle. For a moment, Marcus thought he'd gotten through to him. Then Jamal turned around, and Marcus saw something in his eyes that made his blood run cold. I'm not angry, Marcus. I'm done. The walk across campus felt both endless and too short. With each step, Jamal felt his summer training take over. His breathing controlled, his movements fluid, his mind sharp and focused. He wasn't the broken boy from graduation anymore. He wasn't the victim who'd spent 4 years enduring their cruelty. He was someone who'd been pushed too far. As he approached the Pi Kappa house, music and laughter spilled out into the night. But around back, where the shadows gathered, he could hear Sarah's muffled voice and Tyler's taunting laughter. Jamal rounded the corner and saw them. Sarah with Jake's hand over her mouth, Tyler holding his phone up like he was recording, both of them grinning like they'd already won. Well, well, Jake said, releasing Sarah. "Look who came to play hero." "Let her go," Jamal said, his voice deadly calm as he stepped into the shadows behind the fraternity house. Jake laughed, but there was something forced about it. "Or what? You'll call your grandmother to come save you?" Tyler kept his phone raised, recording. "This is perfect. Everyone's going to see the real Jamal Washington tonight." Sarah tried to speak, but Jake's grip tightened over her mouth. Her eyes were wide with fear, not for herself, but for what she could see building in Jamal's expression. "I said let her go." Jamal took another step forward, and both Jake and Tyler noticed something different about his movement. Fluid, controlled, dangerous. "You're not giving orders here, Washington," Tyler said, but his voice wavered slightly. "You don't belong at this party. You don't belong at this school. You don't belong anywhere near people like us. People like you." Jamal's voice carried a cold edge. "You mean cowards who only fight when it's 2 against 1? Who hide behind daddy's money and attack innocent people?" Jake released Sarah and pushed her aside, stepping toward Jamal. "Careful, boy. You're forgetting your place again." The word boy hung in the air like a lit fuse. Sarah scrambled backward, recognizing that something irreversible was about to happen. "My place." Jamal's composure cracked slightly, months of controlled rage bleeding through. "You want to know what my place is?" "Enlighten us," Tyler said, still recording, thinking he was capturing Jamal's breakdown. "My place is standing up to bullies. My place is protecting people who can't protect themselves. My place is showing cowards like you that your time is up." Jake stepped closer, emboldened by Tyler's camera and the familiar dynamic of intimidation. Big words from someone who spent 4 years running away from us. "I'm not running anymore." "Good," Jake said, shoving Jamal hard in the chest. "Because you've got nowhere to go." But this time, Jamal didn't stumble backward. He absorbed the shove, his feet planted, his core solid from months of training. Jake's eyes widened with surprise. "What happened to you over the summer, Washington?" Tyler asked, lowering his phone slightly. "I learned how to fight." Tyler laughed nervously. "Against who? Your grandmother?" "Against people who actually know how to throw a punch. Not spoiled rich kids who've never been hit back." Jake threw a wild swing at Jamal's head, the same kind of untrained haymaker that had worked in high school when Jamal was smaller and weaker. But Coach Rodriguez had drilled Jamal for months on exactly this scenario. Jamal slipped the punch easily, Jake's fist whistling harmlessly past his ear. Before Jake could recover his balance, Jamal's right cross caught him flush on the jaw, dropping him to his knees. "Holy!" Tyler started, his phone forgotten as he watched his best friend spit blood onto the grass. Jake struggled to his feet, his coordination clearly affected. "You're dead, Washington. You just assaulted me. I'll have you arrested." "For defending myself? Against 2 guys who lured me here with threats against an innocent girl?" Jamal gestured toward Sarah, who was still recording everything on her own phone. "Good luck with that story." Tyler realized the situation had shifted beyond their control. "Jake, maybe we should—" "Shut up!" Jake wiped blood from his mouth, his privileged worldview cracking as he faced the first real consequence of his actions. "Nobody does this to me. Nobody!" He charged at Jamal again, but desperation made him sloppy. Jamal sidestepped and caught Jake with an uppercut that lifted him off his feet before he crashed back down, unconscious. Tyler stared at his friend's motionless form, then at Jamal, who stood over Jake with his fists still raised, breathing hard but controlled. "Your turn," Jamal said quietly. I don't want to fight you," Tyler stammered, finally understanding that they'd pushed someone past his breaking point. "You should have thought about that before you spent months trying to destroy my life, before you used Sarah as bait, before you decided I was your entertainment." Tyler threw a desperate punch, more out of panic than strategy. Jamal caught his wrist, the same way he had during their first encounter on campus. But this time he didn't let go. With Tyler's arm trapped, Jamal drove his knee into Tyler's ribs, then released him to throw a combination that sent Tyler crashing into the fraternity house wall. Both bullies lay groaning in the shadows, their 4 years of casual cruelty finally meeting consequences they couldn't buy or charm their way out of. Jamal stood over them, his chest heaving, his fists bloody, but his mind clear. For the first time since graduation, he felt like himself again. "It's over," he said, looking down at Jake and Tyler. "You're done." Sarah helped Jamal check his knuckles for serious damage when the sound of sirens cut through the party music. Red and blue lights began flashing across the fraternity house walls. "Someone called the police," Sarah said, her voice tight with worry. Jake struggled to sit up against the wall, blood still trickling from his nose. "Yeah, I did. Right after this maniac attacked us." Tyler was pulling his phone out with shaking hands. "I got most of it on video. Jamal Washington assaulting 2 students unprovoked." "That's not what happened," Sarah protested. "I saw everything." "You saw your boyfriend lose control and try to kill us," Jake said, wiping blood from his mouth. Sarah reached for her phone, realizing with horror that in the chaos of being grabbed and threatened, she'd dropped it. The screen was shattered, the device completely dead. Campus security arrived first, followed immediately by city police. Officer Martinez, a veteran cop who took one look at the scene, 2 bloodied white students and 1 standing black student with bruised knuckles, and his expression hardened. "Who wants to tell me what happened here?" Officer Martinez asked. Jake immediately pointed at Jamal. "That guy attacked us! Jamal Washington! He's been making threats all semester, and tonight he just snapped and tried to kill us." Tyler held up his phone triumphantly. "I got it all on video. He came out of nowhere throwing punches like a maniac. Look at what he did to us." Officer Martinez looked at the video Tyler showed him. Shaky footage that began with Jamal throwing his first punch, with no context of what led up to it. "Officer, that's not the whole story," Sarah said desperately. "They lured me back here. They threatened me to get him to come." "Miss, step back, please," Officer Martinez said dismissively. "Son," he addressed Jamal, "turn around and put your hands behind your back." "Officer, wait," Sarah tried again. "I'm a witness. They used me as bait. Without video evidence or other witnesses, it's your word against theirs," Officer Martinez replied. "And I've got 2 victims and clear video of the assault." Jake's father's voice carried across the parking lot as he arrived with Tyler's parents, all having received frantic calls. "Officer, I'm Robert Morrison. These boys were brutally attacked by this individual." The presence of the wealthy parents immediately shifted the dynamic. Officer Martinez's demeanor became more deferential. "My son called me immediately after the assault," Robert Morrison continued. "This Washington character has been stalking and threatening Jake all semester. We have witnesses to his erratic behavior." "That's completely false," Jamal started. "Son, you have the right to remain silent," Officer Martinez said, producing handcuffs. "I suggest you use it." Tyler's mother dabbed at her eyes dramatically. "Look what he did to our boys. They could have been killed. We want full prosecution." Sarah watched helplessly as her broken phone was dismissed as irrelevant evidence. Without it, she had no proof of the threatening phone call, no record of Jake covering her mouth, no documentation of their premeditation. "Officer, please," she tried one more time. "I've been documenting their harassment of Jamal for weeks. I have evidence on my computer." "Miss Chen," Officer Martinez said firmly, "emotional testimony from a friend isn't evidence. We have video of the actual assault and 2 clear victims." Jake was helped to his feet by EMTs, playing up his injuries. "Officer, I want to press full charges. This maniac could have killed us." "We're talking about expulsion from the university," Robert Morrison added. "My family has donated significantly to this institution. We won't tolerate violent criminals on campus." As Jamal was led toward the police car, he caught Sarah's eye. She was crying now, frustrated and powerless, her broken phone useless in her hands. "I'll find another way to prove what really happened," she called after him. "Don't give up." Jake's father put his arm around his son's shoulders. "Don't worry, son. We'll make sure this individual faces the full consequences of his actions. Our family has connections throughout the legal system." Party guests watched from the fraternity house windows as Jamal was placed in the back of the police car. Within minutes, phones were buzzing across campus with Tyler's video. Edited footage that made Jamal look like an unprovoked attacker. Officer Martinez looked at the assembled parents. "This looks pretty straightforward. 2 victims, clear video evidence, and a perpetrator with obvious anger issues." As the police car pulled away, Jamal stared out the back window at Sarah, who stood alone with her broken phone and no way to prove the truth. Jake and Tyler were already spinning their story to gathering reporters, painting themselves as innocent victims of an unstable, violent student. For the first time since the fight, Jamal felt the cold weight of reality. Jake and Tyler had orchestrated everything perfectly. They had money, influence, video evidence, and the automatic credibility that came with their skin color and social status. The county jail holding cells smelled of disinfectant and despair. Jamal sat on the metal bench, staring at his bruised knuckles, while his cellmate, a middle-aged man named Tommy, snored loudly on the opposite bunk. The charges were serious: aggravated assault, battery, and disturbing the peace. His court-appointed attorney had been brutally honest about his chances. "The video doesn't look good for you, son," James Crawford had said during their brief meeting. 2 white college students, good families, clear footage of you throwing punches. The DA's talking about making an example. "Washington visitor," the guard announced, unlocking the cell door. Rosa sat across from him in the visitation room, her eyes red from crying but her spine straight with determination. "Tell me everything, baby." From the beginning. Jamal recounted the night's events, watching his grandmother's expression shift from concern to fury to heartbreak. "They planned this," Rosa said quietly. "They knew exactly how to push you past your breaking point. Doesn't matter now. Their families have money, lawyers, influence. The video shows me attacking them. Even Sarah can't help. Her phone got broken in the struggle." Rosa gripped his hands across the table. "That Sarah girl has been calling me every hour. She's not giving up, and neither am I. Grandma, my scholarship's already suspended. The university's talking about permanent expulsion. Even if I avoid prison, everything we worked for is gone. Nothing's gone until we say it's gone." But even Rosa's fierce determination couldn't hide the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. She'd worked double shifts for years to help with his college expenses, and now it was all crumbling because of 2 boys who saw her grandson as entertainment. Meanwhile, across town, Jake and Tyler were being treated like heroes in their respective family homes. Jake's father had hired the best criminal attorney in the state, while Tyler's family was already planning a civil lawsuit. "The university has assured us that Washington will be permanently expelled," Robert Morrison told Jake over breakfast, "and our lawyer says the criminal case is airtight." Jake nodded, but something nagged at him. The way Jamal had fought wasn't the desperate flailing of an angry teenager. It was controlled, trained, devastating. "Dad, what if people start asking questions about why we were back there with Sarah?" "Son, you're the victims here. Let me worry about managing the narrative." At Tyler's house, his mother was coordinating with a public relations firm. "We need to control this story before it gets out of hand. Tyler, You're going to give an interview to the campus newspaper about campus safety and violence. What should I say? That you and Jake were trying to help Sarah Chen when this unstable individual attacked you without provocation. Emphasize how frightened you were, how you feared for your lives. But Tyler was also feeling uneasy. Sarah Chen had been asking pointed questions around campus, and some students were starting to whisper that the story didn't add up. Sarah herself was working frantically in the library, trying to piece together evidence without her broken phone. She'd reached out to every student who might have witnessed Jake and Tyler's harassment campaign, but most were too scared to get involved once they learned about the criminal charges. "I know what I saw," she told Marcus Thompson, who'd agreed to meet her. "They set him up. They used me as bait and provoked him into fighting." "I believe you," Marcus said, "but believing you and proving it are different things." Jake's family already has people saying Jamal's been violent in boxing sessions, that he's been making threats. Those are lies. Of course they're lies, but they're lies told by people with money and influence. Jamal's story is being told by— Marcus gestured around the nearly empty library. "Us." Coach Rodriguez had driven up from home as soon as he heard the news. He sat in his truck outside the jail, knowing he couldn't visit until tomorrow, feeling like he'd failed his student. His phone rang. "Coach Rodriguez, this is Professor Mitchell from State University. I teach Jamal Washington." "Yeah? I've been watching this situation unfold, and something doesn't sit right. Jamal's one of the most thoughtful, controlled students I've ever taught. He doesn't fit the profile of someone who'd attack unprovoked. Because he wouldn't. Those boys pushed him past his limit. I guarantee it. The problem is proving it. But I've been asking around campus, and there are whispers that Jake Morrison and Tyler Brooks have been harassing Jamal all semester. Can you get people to come forward?" Professor Mitchell was quiet for a moment. "People are scared. The Morrison family has connections throughout the university. Students are worried about their own futures if they speak up." Back in his cell, Jamal lay on the narrow bunk staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow he'd face a judge for his arraignment, and the prosecutor was pushing for him to be held without bail as a flight risk and danger to the community. Everything Jake and Tyler had said about him for months was becoming reality. He was being painted as the dangerous black student they'd always claimed he was, and now he had the criminal charges to prove their point. The courthouse buzzed with tension as Jamal was led into the arraignment hearing in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. The gallery was packed. Jake and Tyler's families sat in the front row, their expensive lawyers flanking them like armor. Rosa sat alone on the other side, having borrowed her best dress for this moment, while Coach Rodriguez and Professor Mitchell occupied the row behind her. Judge Catherine Walsh, a stern woman in her 50s, reviewed the case file as Jamal approached the defendant's table with his overworked public defender. "Your Honor," Prosecutor Jennifer Hayes began, "the state is seeking to hold Mr. Washington without bail. The defendant viciously attacked 2 honor students in an unprovoked assault that was caught on video. He poses a clear danger to the community." Jake and Tyler sat in the front row, their faces carefully composed masks of victimhood. But when Jake caught Jamal's eye, his expression shifted for just a moment. A barely concealed smirk that said, "We won." Tyler leaned over to whisper something to his mother, and both of them glanced at Jamal with obvious satisfaction. The same look they'd worn at graduation when they'd torn up his diploma. "Mr. Crawford," Judge Walsh addressed Jamal's attorney, "how does your client plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor. And we request reasonable bail. Mr. Washington is a scholarship student with no prior criminal record and strong ties to the community." Prosecutor Hayes stood again. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Jake Morrison to describe the brutal attack he endured." Jake took the witness stand with practiced confidence, his family's expensive media training evident in every gesture. He just came out of nowhere, Jake testified, his voice carrying just the right amount of traumatized emotion. Tyler and I were having a normal conversation with Sarah Chen when Jamal Washington appeared and started throwing punches. I've never been so terrified in my life. Had Mr. Washington made threats against you before? Hayes asked. Constantly. He'd been following us around campus, making angry comments about our high school. He clearly held some kind of grudge. Tyler nodded along from the gallery, his face arranged in sympathetic concern. When he looked at Jamal, his eyes held the same cruel amusement they'd always carried, the look of someone who'd never faced real consequences for anything. Rosa's hands clenched into fists as she watched these boys lie with such casual ease. In the row behind her, Coach Rodriguez muttered under his breath, "This is exactly what they wanted." "Your Honor," Jake continued, "I'm afraid of what he might do next. He's clearly unstable and violent. I don't feel safe with him on campus." Robert Morrison nodded approvingly from the front row, his expensive suit and confident bearing radiating the kind of influence that made courtrooms bend to his will. Tyler was called next, his testimony perfectly coordinated with Jake's. "I thought he was going to kill us. The way he fought, it wasn't normal anger. It was like he'd been training to hurt people." When Tyler's eyes met Jamal's during his testimony, he allowed himself a small, triumphant smile, the same smile he'd worn when he'd ripped up the diploma, when he'd shoved Jamal at graduation while the crowd laughed. "I have video evidence of the attack," Tyler added, producing his phone. "It shows everything." The prosecutor played the video for the court, shaky footage that began with Jamal's first punch, with no context of what preceded it. The brutal efficiency of Jamal's fighting was undeniable, each strike precise and devastating. "As you can see, Your Honor," Hayes said, "this was not a moment of passion, but a calculated assault by someone trained in violence." Jamal's attorney tried to object. "Your Honor, this video doesn't show what led to the altercation." "The video speaks for itself, Mr. Crawford." The defendant clearly initiated violence against two defenseless students. From the gallery, Jake's father leaned forward with satisfaction. His donations to various judicial campaigns were paying dividends, and he made sure Jamal could see his confident expression. Tyler's mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the role of grieving parent to perfection. But when she thought no one was looking, she exchanged a knowing glance with Robert Morrison. They'd orchestrated this perfectly. "Your Honor," Prosecutor Hayes concluded, "Jamal Washington represents a clear and present danger. We request he be held without bail pending trial." Judge Walsh looked down at Jamal, who stood silently between his overwhelmed attorney and the weight of systematic injustice. The evidence seemed overwhelming: video footage, victim testimony, character witnesses for the plaintiffs, and a defendant who fit every stereotype about dangerous young black men. "Mr. Washington," Judge Walsh said, "do you have anything to say before I rule on bail?" Jamal looked out at the gallery, at Jake and Tyler's smirking faces, at their families' confident expressions, at Rosa's heartbroken but determined eyes. The same people who'd laughed at his humiliation were now watching his complete destruction with obvious pleasure. "No, Your Honor," Jamal said quietly. "Nothing I say here matters." The truth in those words hung heavy in the courtroom air, acknowledged by everyone present, but spoken by no one else. Judge Walsh was about to rule on bail when the courtroom doors burst open. Detective Maria Santos strode in, her expression grim and determined, carrying a manila folder thick with documents. "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but new evidence has come to light that directly impacts these proceedings." Prosecutor Hayes looked annoyed. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "Detective Santos," Judge Walsh said, recognizing the veteran investigator, "this better be significant." "It is, Your Honor." We've uncovered evidence that completely contradicts the testimony given here today. Jake's confident expression faltered slightly. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing at his parents with the first hint of worry. Detective Santos approached the bench. Your Honor, we obtained a warrant to search the defendant's social media accounts and discovered planning documents for what they called teaching Washington a lesson. There are text messages between Morrison and Brooks detailing their scheme to use Sarah Chen as bait. That's impossible, Robert Morrison whispered harshly to his lawyer. Jake deleted everything, but his lawyer was already pale, understanding that deleted messages could be recovered with proper investigation. Furthermore, Detective Santos continued, we found additional witnesses. Emma Rodriguez, Tyler Brooks's ex-girlfriend, has come forward with recorded conversations where Brooks explicitly discussed plans to destroy Washington's reputation and make him snap so everyone sees what he really is. Tyler's face went white. Emma had recorded their private conversations during their relationship, something he'd never suspected. Your Honor, Detective Santos said, producing a phone from her folder, I have a recording made by Miss Rodriguez 3 days before the incident. She played the audio, and Tyler's voice filled the courtroom. Jake's right. We need to make Washington lose control in public. Get him to fight us, then play the victims. With my dad's connections and Jake's family's lawyers, we'll destroy him completely. Jake's voice responded on the recording. The graduation thing was just the beginning. This time, we finish what we started. The courtroom erupted. Jake's father stood up, his face red with fury. This is entrapment. That recording was made without consent. Actually, Mr. Morrison, Detective Santos replied calmly, Alabama is a one-party consent state. Miss Rodriguez was legally entitled to record conversations she was part of. Judge Walsh banged her gavel for order. Prosecutor Hayes, were you aware of this evidence? Hayes looked genuinely shocked. No, Your Honor. This is the first I'm hearing of any of this. There's more, Detective Santos continued. We also have security footage from the campus library showing Morrison and Brooks researching legal precedents for assault cases, specifically looking up scenarios where alleged victims could claim self-defense. Tyler jumped to his feet. That's not what we were doing. We were just... Sit down, his lawyer hissed, grabbing his arm. But Tyler was panicking now, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. We never meant for it to go this far. It was supposed to be like high school. Tyler, shut up, Jake whispered frantically. Your Honor, Detective Santos said, we also have testimony from multiple campus witnesses who observed Morrison and Brooks systematically harassing Mr. Washington throughout the semester, including attempts to isolate him socially and spread false rumors about his character. Sarah Chen stood up in the gallery, holding a tablet. Your Honor, I've recovered some data from my damaged phone. I have partial audio of them threatening me that night. Professor Mitchell rose as well. Your Honor, I have documentation of the academic harassment campaign against Mr. Washington, including evidence that Morrison and Brooks attempted to sabotage his participation in study groups and campus activities. Jake's father was whispering urgently with his lawyer, who was shaking his head repeatedly. The expensive legal strategy they'd planned was collapsing in real time. Detective Santos, Judge Walsh said, what are you recommending? Your Honor, based on this evidence, we believe Jake Morrison and Tyler Brooks should be charged with conspiracy, false imprisonment, filing false police reports, and perjury. Mr. Washington appears to be the victim of an elaborate harassment campaign designed to provoke exactly the response we saw. Rosa burst into tears of relief in the gallery. Coach Rodriguez put his hand on her shoulder, his own eyes bright with vindication. Jake and Tyler sat frozen, their world of privilege and immunity crashing down around them. The smirks were gone, replaced by the pale recognition that their actions finally had consequences. "Mr. Crawford," Judge Walsh addressed Jamal's attorney, "I assume you'll be filing for immediate dismissal of all charges against your client?" "Yes, Your Honor. And we'll be pursuing charges against the actual perpetrators of this crime." The story exploded across social media within hours of the court hearing. Emma Rodriguez's recordings, combined with Detective Santos's evidence, created a perfect storm that destroyed Jake and Tyler's carefully crafted narrative. "Privileged college students orchestrate elaborate harassment campaign," read the headline on the university newspaper's website. "Audio evidence reveals premeditated plot to destroy black student." Tyler's confession in open court. "We never meant for it to go this far. It was supposed to be like high school," had been recorded by multiple phones and was now trending on every platform. Within 24 hours, the national media picked up the story. Cable news shows played the audio recordings on repeat, with legal analysts calling it one of the most calculated harassment campaigns they'd ever seen. "What we're seeing here," CNN's legal correspondent explained, "is not just bullying, but a systematic effort by these young men to weaponize the criminal justice system against their victim." Jake's father tried damage control, hiring a crisis management firm, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The recordings revealed not just the harassment campaign, but the entitled assumption that their wealth and status would protect them from consequences. At State University, President Catherine Mills called an emergency meeting with the Board of Trustees. The Morrison family's donations suddenly seemed less important than the national scrutiny the university was facing. "The optics are catastrophic," the university's communications director explained. "We have students caught on tape planning to manipulate our disciplinary system, followed by perjury in criminal court. If we don't act decisively, we look complicit." The board voted unanimously. Jake Morrison and Tyler Brooks were expelled from State University, effective immediately, with notations on their permanent academic records that would follow them to any institution they tried to transfer to. Robert Morrison's phone call to President Mills was intercepted by campus security and leaked to the press. "This is ridiculous. My family has donated millions to this university. You can't destroy my son's future over some misunderstanding." "Mr. Morrison," President Mills replied coolly, "your son destroyed his own future when he committed perjury in open court." Meanwhile, Jamal met with civil rights attorney Marcus Washington, no relation despite the shared surname, who had taken his case pro bono after seeing the media coverage. "The evidence is overwhelming," Attorney Washington explained. "We have them dead to rights on civil rights violations, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy, and defamation. Their families have deep pockets, and they're going to pay." The civil lawsuit was filed within a week, seeking $2 million in damages. Jake and Tyler's families initially tried to fight it, but their criminal lawyers advised them that fighting would only make things worse. "The audio recordings make this indefensible," Jake's lawyer told Robert Morrison. "Your son is heard planning the entire scheme. If this goes to trial, the jury will crucify him." The settlement negotiations were swift and brutal. The Morrison and Brooks families, facing mounting legal bills and public humiliation, agreed to a substantial payout rather than risk a jury trial. $1.8 million, Attorney Washington told Jamal over the phone. Plus, they have to issue public apologies and perform community service focused on anti-bullying education. Jamal sat in Rosa's kitchen, still processing how completely his world had changed in just 2 weeks. What about their criminal charges? Jake and Tyler each pled guilty to conspiracy and filing false police reports. They'll serve 6 months in county jail and 3 years probation. Tyler's perjury charge got him an additional 6 months. Rosa, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "Good. Maybe some time behind bars will teach them what it feels like to be powerless. The most satisfying moment came when Jamal received a call from Coach Danny Miller, the head of State University's boxing program. "Son, I've been following your story," Coach Miller said. "The way you handled yourself, showing restraint for months, only fighting when someone innocent was threatened, then maintaining your dignity through this whole legal mess. That's the kind of character I want on my team." "Sir, I'm offering you a full athletic scholarship to join our boxing program. Academic and athletic combined, full ride for 4 years, plus a path to compete nationally if that's something you're interested in." Jamal looked at Rosa, who was crying again, but this time with pure joy. "I'd be honored, Coach Miller." 6 months later, Jamal stood in the gleaming new apartment he'd rented near campus, watching Rosa unpack books in what would be her own bedroom. The settlement money had changed everything, not just financially, but in ways he was still discovering. "I still can't believe this place is ours," Rosa said, running her hand along the granite countertop in the kitchen. "A dishwasher, baby. I haven't had a dishwasher since your parents were alive." Jamal smiled, remembering the cramped house where Rosa had worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. "The lawyer says after we pay taxes and set aside money for your retirement, we'll still have enough for you to quit that cafeteria job permanently." "Quit?" Rosa laughed. "Honey, I'm going back to teaching. Principal Davis already offered me a position at Lincoln Elementary. Says they need someone who knows how to fight for kids who can't fight for themselves." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Rosa would be returning to the same school district where Jake and Tyler had tormented her grandson, but now as an advocate rather than a bystander. Coach Miller knocked on the apartment door, arriving for their weekly check-in. The boxing program had become more than just athletics for Jamal. It was therapy, discipline, and purpose rolled into one. "How are you feeling about the regional tournament next month?" Coach Miller asked, settling into the comfortable couch that Rosa had picked out with obvious delight. "Ready," Jamal said simply. "More than ready." The transformation was visible in everything about him. His shoulders carried confidence instead of defensive tension. His voice held authority rather than the careful quiet of someone trying to avoid notice. The broken boy from graduation had been replaced by a young man who knew his worth. "The ESPN interview requests keep coming in," Coach Miller mentioned. "You sure you want to keep declining them?" "For now. I want to earn my place in the ring first, then tell my story." Rosa beamed with pride. "That's my grandson. Never taking shortcuts, always earning what he gets." Sarah Chen arrived for their weekly study session, carrying coffee and wearing the confident smile of someone who'd found her own voice through the ordeal. She'd been accepted into pre-med programs at 3 top universities, her courage in standing up for truth having caught the attention of admissions committees. "Any word from those two?" Sarah asked, settling at the dining room table where Jamal's textbooks were already spread out. "Their lawyer says they're having a rough time in county jail," Jamal replied. "Apparently, bullies don't do well when they can't hide behind daddy's money." "Good," Sarah said with satisfaction. "Maybe they'll learn something about consequences." The settlement had been more than just money. It was validation. Every dollar represented acknowledgement that what had happened to him was wrong, that his pain mattered, that justice could prevail even when the system seemed rigged against him. Professor Mitchell stopped by that evening, as he did every few weeks, carrying Jamal's latest essay marked with an A+ and extensive comments. "Your writing has evolved remarkably," Professor Mitchell said. "There's a depth to your analysis now, an understanding of injustice and redemption that comes from lived experience." "I had good teachers," Jamal replied, glancing at Rosa, who was preparing dinner in her new kitchen with obvious joy. "The university wants to feature your story in the alumni magazine," Professor Mitchell continued. "From harassment victim to scholarship athlete to academic achiever. It's inspiring. Jamal considered this. Maybe, when I'm ready. That night, as Rosa settled into her own bedroom for the first time in decades, Jamal sat at his desk working on an application essay for law school. His academic scholarship and boxing success had opened doors he'd never imagined. But he'd found his true calling watching Detective Santos and Attorney Washington fight for justice. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Thompson. "Saw the news about your tournament ranking. Told you that summer training would pay off." Jamal smiled, remembering the broken phone call Rosa had made to Coach Rodriguez after graduation, begging him to teach her grandson how to fight. She'd known then what Jamal had taken months to understand. Sometimes you had to be strong enough to demand respect before the world would give it to you. The diploma that Jake and Tyler had torn up at graduation had been replaced by something better. A life built on his own terms, surrounded by people who valued his character, with resources to help others facing similar battles. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.